All right, how's it going, everybody? My name is Amos, and welcome to Dividend Compounders with Cheese. In this video, we're going to be talking about all the stocks that have recently increased their dividend payouts. And remember, this is so freaking important. As dividend growth investors, the dividend is the aftermath, the consequence, and the results of a company crushing or doing well in their operations to be able to increase the dividend that they pay out to you, the shareholders. So a dividend is proof in the pudding that the company has excess cash flow on hand that they just give it back to the shareholders to reward you for investing into that company. So here's how the flow of the video is going to go. We're going to go through each one of these companies one by one, going over the important financials and metrics. And then in the second half of the video, I'm going to be giving you my personal rating on what I think of that company. And then at the very end of the video, I have a special announcement to make. So I encourage you to stick around. Without further ado, let's go ahead and get into it. Company number one that just increased their dividend payout is the Royal Bank of Canada, ticker symbol RY. So they're currently trading for about $126 a share. So from their 52-week low stock price, they're up by 23%. So they bounce back up and their revenue is growing year over year. This is what we investors refer to as the top line. You need to see this number be growing or at least be flat or at least in the same ballpark vicinity. If they're going from generating $20 billion to going down to $15 billion, that's a huge red flag and no bueno. But if we're talking about like $20 billion decreasing down to like $19.7 billion because of some headwinds and some speed bumps, that's not the end of the world. And if they're pretty steady, showing a trend of going back up to like 19.8 billion and then back down to like 19.6 billion because of said headwinds or setbacks, I don't think that's the end of the world. If it's a big drop off, then the red flag must be waving everywhere. But I digress because this video is about the dividend payout increasing. And so their current dividend yield right now is at 3.2%. And their old dividend payout, the annual dividends that you received in one fiscal year, $4.12, and now the new projected dividend payout is going to be $4.44, which is a growth rate of 7%. I think that's pretty good because as dividend growth investors, you want to see this number right here, the dividend growth rate, to be at a number around the rate of inflation or a little higher, so around 3% or better. To see it growing at a rate of 7% year over year, I like it. And then I have the free cash flow per share because we want to know, is this number right here sustainable or not, $4.44? However, in the context of financial banks, it makes no sense to assess and analyze them through their free cash flow. I think when it comes to a bank, it's probably proper to utilize the earnings per share, the net income divided by the shares outstanding, as an assessment on whether or not the dividend is sustainable. So for our case and purpose, I put a not available. However, the payout ratio is 45%, which means there's a lot more room for growth. The dividend is healthy and it seems to be stable for now. And for every $1,000 that you invest into the Royal Bank of Canada, you should expect about $32.50 based on a 3.2% dividend yield. So that was company number one. The next one is going to be Lowe's. They're currently trading for about $225 a share. Their 52-week low price in the stock market for the past 1 year, $206. So they're up by 9% since they hit that very valley. And unfortunately for Lowe's, their revenue is not growing year over year, taking into account the trailing 12 months. So it's a no. However, their dividend yield right now is a 2%, which is my minimum standard. A 2% is decent, but a 3% is the golden standard. So they're just below that, but 2% will give it to them, which means their dividend payout is growing at a rate of 4%. It's going from $4.60 to now $4.80. Not bad. It's slightly above the rate of inflation, and the free cash flow per share is $11.82, which means this is absolutely sustainable. Going off the top of my head is something like, I don't know, 39% or 40% payout ratio according to the free cash flow per share. For every $1,000 invested into Lowe's, you can expect $20.40. The next one is NASDAQ, ticker symbol NDAQ, currently trading for about $83. Their 52-week low was $58. I'm saying this right now. If anybody out here bought into NASDAQ when they were trading for about $59 or $60, you're really lucky because it rebounded and now it's up by 43%. Pretty good stuff. Their revenue is growing year over year. Dividend yield, pretty small, and I hear you. That's because this is a very growth-oriented compounder. You're not necessarily buying into NASDAQ for the high dividend yield right now. You buy into it for the high dividend yield 10 to 15, 20 years down the road. I think of them as the best alternative to S&P Global, FICO, or even Moody's. I think this is the best alternative because it's not a credit rating agency, but rather they operate in cybersecurity for financial companies and everything to do with the NASDAQ stock exchange. But anyways, their dividend payout going from 96 cents to $1.08, that's a growth of 12.5%. So even though the dividend yield is a little short like me, you still get a high growth rate of said dividend. And the free cash flow per share of $3, that means the dividend payout ratio according to the free cash flow is like what, 30%? Super sustainable, really healthy. You love to see it, chef's kiss. But for every $1,000 invested into NASDAQ, roughly about what, like $12.90. However, stock price appreciation alone, let's say you went all out into NASDAQ, meaning 100% into NASDAQ, and let's say you got really lucky, you timed the market, which, by the way, that's a gambler's game. Don't even try to play it. Dude, it's like going into a casino and just pulling on the slot machine all night, hoping you win. But anyways, let's say you timed it right. You bought at the bottom, like, I don't know, 58, 59 bucks a share. Just on stock price appreciation alone, you'd be up by 43%. So can we complain too much about the low dividend payout when this company is more oriented for the growth of your portfolio? So even though NASDAQ's dividend yield right now is lower than Lowe's, I would rather invest into NASDAQ 10 out of 10 times or 7 out of 7 times, or every day of the week, I would pick NASDAQ over Lowe's, even though their dividend yield is higher. Anyways, let's move on to the next company. And friends and family, we have another Canadian financial bank known as the Bank of Montreal. Currently trading for about $107 from their 52-week low. They're up by 39%. Their revenue is growing year over year. By the way, if you don't know, I like bank stocks. I really do. I never really examined international bank stocks. However, the Canadian ones I would say are pretty high quality as an alternative to the American banks. But anyways, their dividend yield right now is 4%. I think that's quite juicy. And the dividend growth, going from $4.44 to that to $4.72, 6% year over year. I like what I see so far. But before I get ahead of myself, let's move on to the next company, and it's going to be Marriott, currently trading for about $263 a share, up from its 52-week low, 28%. Their revenue is growing year over year, and their dividend yield right now, once again, just like NASDAQ, very low. But you don't buy into Marriott for a high starting dividend yield. Okay, so 1%, nothing to write home about. However, I think stocks in the hospitality industry, including Airbnb, more so for the share price appreciation. But the important number that you want to Facebook message your grandma is that the dividend growth is 6% year over year. And I like that. Free cash flow says, hey, this is absolutely sustainable because the dividend payout is about a third of the free cash flow per share. Moving on to the next company is Pool Corporation. Ticker symbol POL. They do everything and anything related to the pool industry. The chemicals, the repair, the maintenance, whatever it takes to get a backyard pool or a community pool up and running. And what's interesting about this company is I was looking at what the super investors were doing as of recently, and it looks like Warren Buffett added 1.4 million shares of Pool Corporation for what it's worth. Anyways, currently trading for about $300 a share. Their stock price is up from their 52-week low, 5%. So they're right around near the bottom price for the past fiscal year. And their revenue growth is not growing year over year, nor has it for the past 2 or 3 years. They're stagnating, okay? Because it's in the consumer discretionary category. A swimming pool is not something that you need to sustain life. It's absolutely a luxury. So when times get hard, or if you need to pull back on your spending, I think a swimming pool is one of the first things to go. And your wife's, manicure and pedicure appointments. Do you really need to go every single week? You could probably push it to 2 weeks. By the way, what's the frequency and distribution schedule of getting a haircut? I don't know. My wife cuts my hair. I know. You like it? I think she did a pretty good job. But anyways, the dividend yield is 1.6%. Not the highest, but once again, it's not one of those like high dividend yield payers, but rather it's like a growth compounder. I mean, obviously by the stock price, you should be able to tell that, right? $300 a share, just like Costco, just like Microsoft, any of the ones where like the stock price is up in like in the $200, $300, $400, $500 region, you should know that it's a share price appreciation type of investment rather than like a high dividend yield. There are certain companies out there where their stock price is like $500, but they also have a very high dividend yield of like 3 or 4%. But those are really rare. But anyways, the dividend grew at a rate of 4% year over year. The free cash flow per share tells us that the new dividend payout of $5 absolutely sustainable, and the payout ratio, according to the free cash flow, the excess cash from their operations, around 40%. To be honest, not bad, and I can see why Warren Buffett bought into it. And that's why I think these days, since he's so old, I don't think he's trying to prioritize the next biggest and greatest company, but rather he likes companies that have a solid balance sheet and a respectable dividend profile, because he seems to really like companies where their revenue is just not growing year over year and it's flat, and sometimes even shrinking. Another one that he really likes is SiriusXM. He owns about a third of all the shares outstanding of SiriusXM. Let me just repeat myself. The parent company for Pandora that's losing subscribers quarter after quarter, year after year to Spotify. He likes that company because, once again, they actually have a good balance sheet. Their revenue is stalling, but their dividend profile is half decent. And another company that Warren Buffett is infatuated with is Occidental Petroleum. I mean, that company's revenue is so inconsistent. However, their dividend profile, sustainable, and their balance sheet, not bad. So, I don't know. I guess when you turn like 92, 93, 94 years old, I guess your priority and your strategy kind of shifts as an investor. Because most likely, if you're watching this video, you're between the ages of like 45 to 56 and you're male. And I feel like our game plan in the stock market is entirely different to that of a super investor that has billions of dollars to play with. By the way, I just grouped myself into that demographic and category, even though I'm in my mid 30s. But hey, my argument is this. Every friend group and community needs that young guy. I guess I'm the young guy, which is really weird. I feel like the mantra and the universal truth for anybody that's under the age of 49 is that you need to only invest into growth stocks. And I could not disagree more. I just feel like that's a stupid, idiotic statement to make as a blanket statement, because it's not a one size fits all, kind of like a sock. By the way, doesn't that blow your mind? That the average sock fits a shoe size from like 6 to 13, which is kind of weird. By the way, if your foot size is a 6 or is a 13, I mean, how does that feel, or how does that fit you? Because I'm in the middle. I'm a size 10. I'm pretty average across the board. So for me, it just fits fine. But I feel like if your foot size is a 6, it's probably super baggy, right? And I don't know about you, but I really like darn tough socks. But it's one of those things where it is always freaking baggy on my foot for some weird reason. The thicker it is, the more baggier it gets, and it gets more bunched near the toe box. Kind of uncomfortable. But before I start going on a rant as to why everybody needs to start drinking the Kool-Aid for the SCHD cult, let's get back to the video. I have that terrible tendency to just get so sidetracked and start talking about the most random things. That's ADHD for you. By the way, one of these days I do need to get on the medication, because I heard that if you have this and you get on Adderall, like boom, you're so focused and your work output and productivity through the roof. I feel like for someone like me, super beneficial. And you're probably thinking like, how the hell did you get a master's degree having all of these learning disabilities holding you back? I just had to work twice as hard. Like, dude, getting through a chapter reading of a textbook, normal person takes them, 30, 45 minutes? Dude, it would take me like 3 hours, because I would have to read the same page like 2, 3, 4, 5 times, because I get so sidetracked. But anyways, that is seriously too much, because I know nobody cares. So let's move on to the next company. This is a company that everybody, including their ex-wife, should know, Apple. And I'm going to be honest with you, Apple has seen better days, because for the past like year and a half, things are not looking too good for them. Their stock price right now, $200 a share. Their 52-week low, $169. I regret not buying more shares when they bounce down to 170. I mean, I was eyeballing them, but I only have a limited amount of gunpowder and capital, right, to deploy. So I made the executive decision to go into Google and Microsoft instead. But Apple should have been right up there in the conversation. And Amazon, for me, my buy price was 170 and below. But once again, they were just not in the top 2 or 3. I think Amazon was like number 6. So like going in the order, And all that to say, I've been a shareholder of Apple since it's been many years, since 2018, 2019, something like that. So it's a company that I genuinely like. I mean, my freaking phone right here that you see on the desk is an iPhone. I don't know if you can see that on the camera, but it's an iPhone. I believe in the company. But anyways, from their 52-week low, they have bounced back 18%. Is their revenue growing year over year? Of course it is. This is a tech company that is a part of the Magnificent Seven. Of course their revenue is growing year over year, right? Dividend yield, nothing to write home about. It's across the board, including Microsoft and Google. Their dividend yield, their dividend profile kind of sucks. I'm not going to lie. However, you invest into them for their economic moat, their balance sheet, and their free cash flow production. You don't invest into the Mag 7 for their dividends, okay? And that's why as a dividend growth investor, I'm kind of a hybrid kind of a guy. Not only do I like the high dividend payers like BDCs, but I also like growth compounders that also pay a dividend like Apple. But anyways, their dividend is growing at a rate of 4%, which between you and me, I think that's being really stingy. Like your restaurant food bill coming out to like $120 and you only tipping $1. Like, dude, that's too stingy. Okay, at least do like 15, 20% tip. But anyways, a 4% growth rate, dude, they could do better. And this is why, okay? Their free cash flow per share, which is a better assessment than the EPS to the health of the dividend and the sustainability of it, is $6.48. So their new dividend payout is $1.04. If you do the math, that payout ratio is like, what, 12, 15%? Dude, there's so much more room for growth. However, I think the leadership team, the board of directors, and all those high-paid leaders, I think they're trying to play it safe and conservative. Because I've seen it time and time again, when a company has like an anomaly year where the revenue goes from like 10 billion to that of 15 billion, they get too happy and too gung-ho and trigger happy. And they're like, okay, we're going to increase this dividend by like 40, 60, 80%. And then what do you know? Like 2 or 3 or 4 years down the road, they run into financial troubles and they end up cutting the dividend. I've seen it too many times. So I think the path of slow, safe, and steady, I guess you can't complain when you look at it from a business perspective. But from an investor's perspective, of course my ass is chapped. Of course I'm annoyed. I'm like, dude, I absolutely know that you can afford to increase it by like 10 or 12% year over year. But I get it. The next company is Flowers Foods. Ticker symbol FLOW. Currently trading for about $16.90, which means when you take a look at their 52-week low price of $16.29, dude, they're only up by 3%. Meaning buying into them right now, you're practically getting them at their bottom valley price, whether that's a good or a bad thing. And their revenue, is it growing year over year? Unfortunately, it's a no. It's pretty much flat. And when we take a look at their current dividend yield, a 5.8%. Let me just repeat myself for the ones that are pooping and about to wipe, or you're doing something else like washing the dishes or walking the dog. A 5.8% dividend yield that is qualified. This is a boring business model. Flowers Foods, they bake and they sell bread and other baked goods. That is so boring. However, a 5.8% dividend yield, where do I go? Sign me up. Okay, I like that. And when we take a look at their growth rate of their dividend, it's a 3% growth rate year over year. And so when I think about their dividend profile, I think it hits all the boxes of what I want and want to see, right? A 5.8% dividend yield, that is way above my 3% golden minimum standard. The growth rate is that of the inflation, 3%, and it's sustainable. How do I know it's sustainable? Well, their free cash flow per share is $1.50. They're paying out 99 cents per share of their cash flow, in which they have $1.50. So their dividend, 5.8%, you might be like, dude, that's too high. This is not sustainable. They're going to cut it. If you look at the facts and the numbers and what they're actually generating in terms of their free cash flow, their dividend is safe. This is not financial advice, but for the time being, it is safe. If something changes and their free cash flow goes negative, of course it's not sustainable. However, if the free cash flow per share stays at $1.50, goes up to like $1.55, they'll be more than okay. But let's move on to the next company. And that next company is going to be Medtronic, ticker symbol MDT. Currently trading for about 82 bucks. 52-week low price was $76. They're up by 9% since then. And this is a company that has been on my watch list for like 7 years. So it's a very high quality company that I like, that I have industry experience in, because my former company that I used to work for, we had a medical devices department. And so I got to kind of learn about the landscape of our competitors and peers and rivals. Medtronic was up there on that list of what makes a really good competitor. And so I know their business model is good and I like what I see in them. So is it any surprise that their revenue is growing year over year? So their top line, yes. Current dividend yield is 3.4%. However, a yellow flag that goes up, because the red flag would be if they're cutting or not growing the dividend at all. A yellow flag because it's only growing at a rate of 1.4%. So I'm thankful that it's going from 280 to 284, but growing it at a 1.4%, kind of weak, right? Because when we look at their free cash flow per share, $4 per share, it's absolutely affordable, and they could at least bump it up to like a 2% or a 3% growth rate. But once again, the logic with like Apple, playing it safe, playing it slow rather than being aggressive and then having to cut it is a worse decision, right? So I guess I'm not a happy camper, but it makes sense. Let's move on to the next company, which is Northrop Grumman. Ticker symbol NOC. And this is a company where I did a deep dive for in the military stocks video that I uploaded a couple months ago. If you haven't watched it, I think it's really informative and insightful, especially if you don't really know about the military landscape. So before I worked in corporate America, I used to be an Army officer, so hands-on experience, and Northrop Grumman is one of the big players. Currently trading just shy of 500 bucks a share, 484 to be exact. From their 52-week low, they're up by 15%. Revenue growth, yes, they are, friends and family. They're growing year over year for their top line. Dividend yield is 1.9%, just shy of that decent number of 2%. But their dividend, this is what we want to know about. Because after all, this video is about stocks that recently increased their dividend payouts. Because that's all we care about, right? Because the dividend is the consequence and the aftermath and the result of a company crushing their operations and having more cash left over so that they can do so. And they're growing it at a rate of 12%. Can we get a woo? Anybody doing it? Okay, just me. Okay, 12%. Dude, that's beautiful. Did anyone else raise their dividend by double digits? Yes, NASDAQ did as well, a 12% dividend increase. So to see it from a military industrial complex player, you'll have to see it, right? A 12% growth rate. And their free cash flow per share essentially tells us, is this sustainable or not? $12. So it's roughly what? Like a 73% payout ratio? Not bad at all. So the dividend is healthy and it's sustainable. Especially when it comes to the defense contractors, you don't just look at it with like a 70% or below payout ratio being healthy. Rather, for them, I think having a higher payout ratio is not the end of the world because they have a lot of CapEx. So a lot of their cash flow does end up going into producing factories and improving their infrastructure so that they can build out more tanks, planes, and equipment. So understanding their landscape, free cash flow, $12.15 is super impressive. All right, the next one is a REIT, Independence Realty Trust. They have a whole portfolio full of apartments that are across the South. And as of right now, $18.59. The REIT industry as a whole, I would argue for the past like 2.5, 3 years, kind of struggling, right? We're in a very high interest rate environment. It's not favorable for those mortgages and those loans to do business. So with that said, I mean, of course, their revenue did not grow year over year. However, their dividend yield is 3.6%, which for me, for a REIT, is kind of low. Because for a REIT, because you have unfavorable tax implications and you're taxed at your income bracket level, it should be higher. Okay, for Medtronic, a qualified dividend payout of 3.4% to almost be equivalent to that of a REIT, not good enough. That's why when it comes to a REIT, you at least want to see like a 4 or 4.5%. If it's around 6%, even better. But if it's too high and it goes around like the number of like 10% or 12%, no bueno. because that dividend is not going to be sustainable. I'm telling you right now. But all that to say, a 3.6% dividend yield, very underwhelming. It's kind of like after a good workout, you take a shower and you turn it on to the coldest setting right before you hop out to embrace David Goggins' stay hard motto. And then you look at yourself in the reflection, you see your tiny wiener shriveled up because of the cold water. It's just very underwhelming. Okay, I'm not impressed, especially for a REIT. However, we'll give some props where props are due. They did grow the dividend at a rate of 6% year over year, and their free cash flow per share, irrelevant. It's a REIT. Okay, so their adjusted funds from operations, a lot more important than the free cash flow. So I just went ahead and put a not available. Moving on to the next company is going to be Hamilton Beach Brands. They're basically in the business of kitchen appliance equipment, and some of their rivals would be like Whirlpool and Ninja. So right now, $18.27 a share, and my goodness, did they have quite the rebound from their 52-week low. Roughly 38% bounce from their lows. Their revenue is growing year over year. Dividend yield is 2.6%. Dividend growth rate 4.3%. There's nothing too crazy or nothing that really stands out except how sustainable their dividend actually is. Because as we take a look at their free cash flow per share, $3.57, dude, to be paying out 48 cents, really low. Because as a benchmark, if we compare them to Whirlpool, they pay out about $7 annually in dividends, and their free cash flow per share is $10.46. So it's like what, around a 70% payout ratio. But for Hamilton Beach, dude, this is a really low payout ratio. And as a matter of fact, they do have the ability to increase that dividend payout by a lot more than 4% year over year. Just saying. Next company is PepsiCo. Currently trading for about $131. From their 52-week low, they're up by 2.9%. So basically buying into them right now is essentially buying them at their valley price. That's not financial advice. That's just the facts, right? And their revenue, is it growing year over year? No, it's relatively flat, so it's a no. Their dividend yield is a 4.3%. It's qualified. Sign me up, friends and family. And they've been growing their dividend. Here's the thing. For the past, just give me a second, I gotta look it up. For the past 53 years, some of you watching this video, dude, you're not even 30, you're not even 40. They're growing their dividend payout for the past 53 years. So on a personal level, I think that's really impressive. So the dividend payout is going from $5.40 to essentially like $5.70. Growth rate, just shy of 5%. Their free cash flow per share, I mean, this is where the red flag goes up, is $5.28. That means the dividend payout is higher than their free cash flow per share, which means the leadership team is either playing with fire or paying in the dark by raising it by 5% and saying, hey, we're confident that the free cash flow is going to go up in the next 9 to 12 months, or I don't know. However, on the flip side, their earnings per share for the trailing 12 months is $6.83. So on an accounting perspective and level, the dividend is sustainable, but from a free cash flow per share POV, things are not looking too good. However, I have confidence in the leadership because if they're going to expose their nipples and say, hey, let's grow up by 5%, even though they know their free cash flow per share is less than, then they must have the confidence in their forecast and in their numbers. Otherwise, I'm going to tell you right now, their FP&A team, they're going to get fired, okay, for forecasting it wrong. But anyways, dividend profile looks yellow, because I really like the growth rate and the yield itself, but the sustainability of it is questionable. However, their earnings per share, their net income divided by the shares outstanding, it does seem like the dividend payout should be sustainable, but I guess time will tell. If they cut this dividend, I might sell out of them. All right, friends and family, the next company is American Water Works, ticker symbol AWK. Very boring business model. It's a water utility. Okay, it's not sexy. They're not building EVs. They're not building satellites. They're not doing anything sexy. They're purifying and treating water. Currently trading for about $142, and it's up 20% from their 52-week low. Is their revenue growing year over year? If you want to giggle like a nun in a cucumber field, just pull up their financials. Dude, a water utility company like American Water Works, they crush it. It's kind of hilarious to see. But anyways, of course their revenue is growing year over year. And their economic moat, beyond belief, okay? When you think about the utility sector, they have a monopoly by design, meaning wherever you decide to move to in the US, it doesn't matter if it's in the middle of nowhere, Arkansas, or in Florida, you usually only have one or two utility providers, if that. And when it comes to water, it's usually just one company doing it. So American Water Works, love the business model. Anyways, the dividend yield is 2.3%. It's decent, and it's growing at a rate of 8% year over year. And we don't look at the free cash flow for a utility, because CapEx and reinvesting into the company because they need to modernize, improve, and stabilize their equipment quarter after quarter is the name of the game. So free cash flow is not going to be relevant for them. Their dividend payout ratio is 60%. For a utility, I think that's very healthy because usually their payout ratios are very high, like 85 or 92%. But for American Water Works, they're contrarian. They go against the herd. 60% payout ratio. The next company is RTX. Anyways, this is another defense contractor. Very high quality, a very promising future, at least for the next 5 to 10 years. Their 52-week low is $99. If you snag them at that price, pat yourself on the back, because they're up by 37% since then. Is their revenue growing year over year? Of course. It's a defense contractor. And their dividend yield right now, let's just go ahead and say 2%. Are you going to be angry? No? Okay, 1.99%. But anyways, their dividend payout grew at a rate of 8% year over year. And the sustainability of it, you'll have to see it, $4.05. So $2.72, absolutely healthy, sustainable, and there's plenty of room for growth. If all else were to remain the same, the free cash flow per share is stuck at $4.05, they can still afford to grow their dividend. And then last but not least, friends and family, we have Alphabet. We have Google. And once again, out of the Mag 7, they're definitely undervalued. Especially when I think about like Tesla. Dude, bonkers numbers, just makes no sense. By the way, my t-shirt Under Armour, this is a perfect example of a business, a product, or a service that's really high quality, but an investment in the stock market probably would never touch. I like the brand, I like how it feels on my naked body, but I don't think I would invest into them. And it's the same way that I feel about Nike too, right? Like very high quality. Well, actually in the past like 10 years, their products have been going downhill because they're trying to save on costs, but I still think Nike is pretty good quality. But would I invest into a clothing retail brand? Probably not. I mean, I just made a video about Carter's, and that's essentially the conclusion that I reached for that company as well. I know it's a specialty niche, and it's only for babies that can barely hold their own head up. I mean, can you imagine that? Having a head so big, it just flops to the side. You got to hold it up. Still wouldn't invest into them, even though I know they have an economic mode. But anyways, Google, currently 171, 52-week low. They did hit 140. I was buying shares of Google like a madman. When they hit 165, buying shares. When they were hitting 155, buying shares. When they hit 145, buying shares. I'm weird. I have like this thing where I only buy in increments of 1, 5, or 10. 1 shares, 5 shares, or 10 shares. Google is probably one of my biggest convictions right now. But anyways, from their 52-week low, they're up by 22%. And is their revenue growing year over year? Absolutely. Their balance sheet is just really phenomenal. It's textbook on what you want to see in a potential investment. That's not financial advice. It's really solid across the board. But anyways, their dividend yield, very similar to Apple, 0.5%. Okay? Nothing pretty. Nothing crazy. They're growing their dividend also at a very small single-digit number, 5% year over year. Their free cash flow per share, this is what I want to call it, $6.04. Dude, that is astronomically high in comparison to the dividend payout of 84 cents. And now it's time to talk about whether or not I would buy into the companies that we review today and the rating that I would give them. Me personally, okay? It's not financial advice, it's just how I feel. Okay, so the first one is going to be the Royal Bank of Canada. So on a personal level, I think I like bank stocks. I like their business model, I like their balance sheets, and I really like their dividend profiles. However, when I think about their valuations across the board, except maybe like 1 or 2, they're very overpriced right now. And so when I think about the financial industry wanting that high dividend yield, I would rather just go with a BDC. I think BDCs are slightly overvalued, actually fairly valued, maybe trending towards the overvalue side, but not as crazy as banks. So does it come as a surprise that for the Royal Bank of Canada, I would give it a rating of a maybe? Given the right price, I would buy it, but I don't think it would be a priority on my watch list. There's other stocks that I'm eyeballing right now. And the next one is going to be Lowe's. And I'm going to be a straight shooter with you. When it comes to Lowe's, I'm just not interested in a hardware retail chain. I'm not. This includes Home Depot. Rather not buy into them because I think it's kind of contingent upon people having excess cash on hand in order to do home improvement. And I feel like that's intertwined with consumer discretionary spending, which, as we all know right now, it's trending downwards. So Lowe's it's not a company that I have full faith and conviction for. However, when we talk about hardware specialty stores, Tractor Supply Co. If you know, you know. That's the place you go to instead of a Lowe's or Home Depot. Anyways, the next company is going to be NASDAQ. And I'm just going to say it like this. This is a crucial player in the stock market infrastructure. So for me, I think it's a long-term buy and hold. This is one of the few companies in the stock market, because they literally are an integral part of the stock market, to buy and hold. Not financial advice, just my personal game plan. And I have it rating as a would buy because I actually own them in my portfolio. And I made a deep dive video about them a little over like a year and a half ago. It was one of my first videos that I uploaded and I had low self-esteem and I didn't even show my face on the camera. I bought into them at about like $40 a share. It was like a stupid low price. And after I did my homework, I was like, dude, this company is way too undervalued. I have to buy it. And I did. So I have them in my personal portfolio. Would I buy them again? I would. They're just not up there in the priority watch list, but I think this is a really solid, high quality alternative to S&P Global. I'll say it again. Not financial advice. The Bank of Montreal, the exact same thoughts and opinions as the Royal Bank of Canada. A maybe. Given the right price, maybe. So I don't know if I articulated it earlier, but I genuinely think that hotel stocks are very high quality and a good, solid cash flow business. However, their valuations just don't make sense to me right now. It's way too high. And so for Marriott, I'm going to go ahead and say maybe. Given the right price, I don't think it's the worst idea in the world. I think hotels are pretty good. And I feel like a lot of people are having Airbnb fatigue right now. If you're one of those Airbnb investors, I feel for you. Because I think people are starting to turn their backs on having to do 20 to 50 bucket items before you check out. Like, you got to do the dishes, you got to do the laundry, you got to do this and this. It's like, dude, I'm paying to stay at this place on vacation and you want me to do household chores? It's getting out of hand. It's getting a little ridiculous. And I think people are running back towards the traditional hotel experience where they make you feel like a guest rather than having to act like a maid while you're on vacation, if that makes sense. So Marriott and Hilton, I feel more bullish towards than the future of Airbnb. I think their business model in the beginning, super good idea. However, I think some of the investors of Airbnb, the ones who bought and flipped homes and started renting it out to people, I think they got a little too crazy, a little too Karen into their methodology of what they expected their guests to do. And now the Airbnb experience, just not worth it. Especially, dude, if you book a night at an Airbnb room or a house for like $99, why in the world do you have to pay a $100 cleaning fee and so the total fees become $200? It just makes no sense. Just go and stay at a Hilton or a Marriott or Best Western at that price, right? And you get free breakfast. Just make it make sense. Anyways, next one, Poll Corporation. Once again, this is a business in the consumer discretionary industry, and I just feel like their future looks a little rough, okay? And their growth story, for me, it's just way too cyclical, not durable, and it's not reliable. However, I will give this to them. They do have a very excellent economic moat. I did look into them because so many people seem to really like a pool, chemicals, and equipment company. So I was like, what's the big fuss and deal? I get it. They do have an economic moat. However, it's a pool. Like I said earlier, it's not something that you need every single day. Okay? And I feel like it's one of the first expenses to go when times are rough. So for me, it's a no way, Jose. I would not invest into Poll. I don't care if Warren Buffett is investing into it. I would not follow him into it. Likewise, not a fan of the Occidental Petroleum investment that he's doing. I feel like if you were to pick like ExxonMobil or Chevron or one of the other big players that do all of it, upstream, midstream, and downstream for the oil and gas field, then I'd be like, okay, makes sense. But for Occidental, I'm like, dude, I don't know. Warren, I don't know, man. So I think I said everything that needed to be said about Apple earlier. To me and my left nipple, they're absolutely a long-term compounder, a buy and hold, another one of the few companies in the stock market. However, I think given the tariff situation that's happening, that's unpredictable and is crazy and causes the market to be so volatile, I just think for this company, the next 6 to 12 months, it's going to be absolutely rough for them. However, as a shareholder of Apple, it is a company that I would buy at the right price. At $200, probably not. I wouldn't dollar cost average at $200 a share, but at $170, I don't think it's the worst idea in the world. That's not financial advice. So my rating is a would buy. Now, if you are a follower of this channel, then you know an industry that I'm going big into right now are the food CPG stocks. Hormel, Flowers Foods, okay, General Mills, because I think right now they're absolutely undervalued. And I think their revenues stalling is just a temporary setback that I think in the future, like in 5 or 10 years from now, they're absolutely going to be okay and they're going to rebound and their sector as a whole is going to be thriving once again. So I'm putting my money where my mouth is. I need to look into that statement. I always say it wrong. My mouth where my money is, and I'm buying into it. Okay. So for me, the dividend compounders guy, it's a would buy for me. For you, it could be different, right? Based on your homework and analysis, you could be like, dude, Flowers Foods? Absolutely not. However, for me, I'll report back to you in 3 to 5 years whether or not I regret doing so, but Conagra Brands is also in that conversation. I'm buying into them. I believe in it. So the next one is Medtronic, and their entire situation and outlook right now, it's a little hairy because their margins are decreased because of the whole tariff situation and they need the parts and supplies to build out their equipment. And also their guidance for the future, because of that, it's not bright. Okay, and they're also transitioning out a very trusted and loved executive leader. So there's uncertainty hanging around and reigning on the head of this company. And so Wall Street is just feeling kind of bearish towards them. However, like I said earlier, I love their business model. I love their economic moat. You know, they have so many patents and regulatory barriers. You can't just encroach upon their territory overnight. Like if you are a startup trying to become a medical device company, I think it's a very promising venture and the dividends will pay off. However, I feel like Medtronic has been doing it for decades. The experience and the expertise that they have in their intellectual property vault, it's what we say as the first mover's advantage. They've been doing what they've been doing for so long, it's kind of hard for a startup to compete with them. So all that to say, does it come as a surprise that my personal rating for Medtronic, even though I don't like the pharmaceutical industry as a guy that used to work for it, I would absolutely buy into a medical device business given the right price. Another really high quality one is Edwards Lifesciences. They double down on everything to do with like the heart and the valves associated with it. But Medtronic is a company that I'm eyeballing very closely. Don't be surprised if I make a deep dive video in the future, because if they do reach, like $76 a share, I'm going to stop whatever it is I'm doing at that moment and start doing my homework to figure out, is this company a buy or not? Now, I have not done the full thorough deep dive to reach a conclusion that they're a streaming buy. So as of right now, maybe. So I promise that I'm not a racist or crazy or evil, but I will say this. I'm absolutely bullish on the military-industrial complex, especially with this presidential administration, because they truly believe in the mantra that peace through strength. Now, how do you build strength? By fortifying and increasing your military footprint, especially the equipment. So the next 3 years, I'm absolutely bullish for stocks like Northrop Grumman, Huntington Ingalls, Lockheed Martin, and I hate to say it because I'm not a fan of them, but even Boeing, right? They just landed new contracts for the F-45 fighter jet planes. So even Boeing is making a comeback. So does it come as a surprise that for Northrop Grumman, my personal rating for them is I would buy them given the right price. At $484, kind of steep, right? This is one of those companies where I can only buy like maybe a partial quarter share if they reach the right price. But yeah, moving on to the next company, Independence Realty Trust. And honestly, I would rather just buy into commercial or industrial REITs and double down on my existing investments. okay, like Rexford and Realty Income. So when it comes to IRT, it's a pass. I would not buy into them. However, I think if their valuation reaches like 16 bucks again, I don't think it's the worst idea in the world. So for me, it's a maybe, not financial advice, but it's not prioritized on my watch list of like, this is what I need to buy if it reaches that price. There are like 20, 30, 40 stocks ahead of them in that queued line. That makes sense on the wait list. Now with Hamilton Beach Brands, I learned my lesson the hard way, okay? I'm a shareholder of Whirlpool, and I learned that when it comes to appliances, it's very cyclical, okay? It's not every single quarter that you say, honey, we need to go and buy a new oven. We need to buy a new washer and dryer. No, right? It's very cyclical. It happens like every 3 to 5 years. And then for apartment complexes, I feel like the life cycle is like 5 to 10 years because they buy the commercial version of whatever it is you're trying to buy. And so it has ebbs and flows for appliances. And that's why for me, I would not buy into Hamilton Beach. Now, as an investor of Whirlpool, I would argue their prospects and future is brighter than Hamilton, but they're still in the same category of consumer discretionary, and they're going to be suffering, especially given the tariff wars. Because when you want to build out a blender or a drying machine, where do you think that stuff is coming from? Right? A Chinese factory worker in the middle of nowhere, China, is making that part for you, and the tariffs are brutal right now. So this is a company that I would not invest into, okay? No way, Jose. Let's talk about PepsiCo. This is a company, time and time again, I've told you guys that I'm buying shares. I buy like 1 share a week. As they keep trading flat at around 130, I'm just like, okay, I'll just buy another share. You're gonna continue to be undervalued? I'm gonna continue to pick up 1 share. So does it come as a surprise? My rating for them is a would buy. I wouldn't recommend you follow me into it. I think the food CPG companies, their short-term future doesn't look bright, right? That's why they're trading flat. They're essentially the same price. Their 52-week low is just their constant line of like support and resistance. They just stay in that zone. So for me, I'm gonna keep buying into them. And if you follow the channel 3 to 5 years from now, I guess I'll make a video like, wow, this is how much I made on the food stocks when I bought into them during their absolute historical lows. We'll see. The next one, American Waterworks. American Waterworks is a company that I own in my portfolio. I really like them. And my only regret with this company is earlier this year, they did go down to like 119, 118 a share, as you can see on your screen. I didn't buy more shares. I should have bought more. So this is a company that I really like. They're doing a lot of CapEx right now, especially in the state of California, in order to filter out and process the forever plastics that are in our water system, which, by the way, every single one of us has so much plastics in our body now, it kind of sucks. Okay, sucks. But anyways, American Waterworks, I really like. And if I could buy more shares less than 120 bucks, I would do it. So for me, it's a would buy. And the next one is RTX, another military industrial complex player. I really like them. Would I buy them? Absolutely. And last but not least, I saved the best for last because I think my portfolio, the biggest holding right now is probably Google. I have to double check and verify. I could be wrong. I'm probably wrong, but it's probably top 3. Google, I really like. I think what they're doing right now in the AI movement and their future prospects with Waymo, I just like this company. I'm going to continue to dollar cost average into them just like the food CPG companies. So my personal rating is a would buy. So what do you guys think? What are your thoughts and opinions about the 15 or 16 companies that we talked about here today? Which ones are you invested into? Which ones do you think are ugly? Do you disagree with my assessments? Do you agree? Let me know. Please let me know. Because if it's just complete silence, then you'll make me feel like a schizophrenic. I'm just talking to myself for like the past 2 hours. Anyways, transitioning on to the special announcement. I don't know how else to say this. It's I'm scared, I'm excited, but ultimately I feel like I'm not ready. But then again, this is one of those things where there's just no perfect timing. Okay? No matter what stage of life you are in, there's just never such a thing as this is the right time to do it. So later on this year, I am going to become a dad. Yeah, this is pretty wild. Okay? I'm going to be a father. And one part of me is really looking forward to coaching them when they play on their soccer team, teaching them all the lessons that I didn't know when I was a kid, and giving them stuff so they don't have to go through what I went through in my childhood. And then the other side of me is I'm scared. I'm like, dude, you're about to become a father. This is wild. So if you are a parent and you're watching this video, what's an advice that you can give me? because I'm trying to do all the research and homework that I can so that I can be the best dad that I can be. And I'm still thinking about how I'm going to balance doing everything that I do, but I'll figure out the logistics of how to optimize my upload schedule and to keep creating content. And that's why this part's really important. I was really hoping that you guys could support me on Patreon. If you're already supporting me, dude, I love you. Thank you so much. However, more than ever, I think right now I really need y'all's help. So to make it a game and to make it fun, I'll say this. If we reach 15 members of Patreon, it doesn't matter which tier, just 15 members as a whole, I will get rid of my hair. And you know I really love my hair, okay? So if we reach 15 members, 15 paid members, dude, I'll cut it all off. I'll buzz it. I'll shave it. That's my promise to you if we hit 15 members. As of right now, we have 7. I haven't been advertising the Patreon for like the past 10 videos, but I thought this would be the perfect time because number 1, the Patreon has exclusive content that I do not share or show on YouTube. But also number 2, with a baby on the way, I feel like your financial support would mean so much more in the future. And then number 3, if you decide not to become a member of the Patreon, even just watching this video all the way through and commenting, it helps me out. So I appreciate you guys, regardless of what you decide to do. I would appreciate the Patreon support, but if it doesn't come, it's okay. I love you guys. Stay safe. Good luck in the stock market. And yeah, that's my big special announcement. Talk to you guys really soon. Peace.